Okay, everybody, I made this video in response to some inquiries I've had about inquiries and feedback about the new pricing schema. And I knew this was gonna happen. That's why I actually also wrote this FAQ that you can reference here. I'm probably going to include this video in that FAQ just so that people can see it there too. But I thought I'd just take a few minutes to just explain the pricing and why it's set up the way it is. Because when you go to this page, I will definitely be the first to admit that it does look a little bit overwhelming. It looks kind of complicated. And when you're looking at all this, it's like, wow, that's a lot of different numbers. Look at all these sliders. I got to figure this out. All right, well, here's the bottom line. Here's what all you need to really know about this. Okay, let's go down. Let's just show what it looks like here. You've got a couple of different kind of costs. Actually, there's basically four. There's two categories. There's users, and then there's data or storage. In terms of users, when you upgrade a plan, like you're on a trial and you're going to go to a regular plan, you're just going to be, all you really have to set is the number of staff users that you want. So if, let's say you just want one staff user, you're kind of a freelancer and you just want one, which is $29.85 monthly. So that's already here. You always have to have at least one of those. So that we have that. And then you'll even though you don't have to set this when you're signing up, this is just billed monthly based on how many customers that you choose to enable. So if you've got, let's say you have 200 customers in your company file, and you plan to enable, I don't know, maybe more than half, like this, 150 or so of those you anticipate to enable. So you're going to say, all right, so at 15 cents, I'm looking at about $20, $22. So my plan is now at 52, okay? And then down here, you're looking at, well, how many records do you have? Now, the reason why we have this is because when you're synchronizing accounting data, you can't just synchronize some of it. You have to synchronize all of it. Otherwise, when you're ready to enable another customer or turn somebody on, the data's not going to be there, and you're going to have to resync everything again just to do that, because the way we sync is based on the last time the last sync ran, and then it gets all the changes from anything that changed since the previous synchronization. Otherwise, we got to go out and grab and pull every single piece of data separately, every invoice, every change, every kind of thing that gets touched. We would have to go get each one and do a query against the accounting system to fetch all that. So you're talking about a ton of I/O. It's not really manageable. I've done some testing even more than a year ago. I did another revisit of that. Like, is there a way to do it? And there's just not. So by the very nature of this kind of system where you're synchronizing metadata, you're taking accounting data and presenting it online, you have to have a copy of it online. There's just no choice. So what we have to do is we have to have a metric for the total number of records, because we have to sync all that, maintain it, keep all of the indexes, because we do a lot of cross-tabular things, like where you have, especially where you have accounts with a parent and a child. The parent can see the child records. So we have all these pointers that have to be maintained on, say, for example, invoice records. And then the relationship between a parent and a child customer, things like that. So basically, you're paying a penny. Okay, so it's 1 cent per customer customer account that we sync, that is populated into the system. So let's just say in this case we have I don't know, several hundred here. So like 477, that's $4.77. Let's just leave it right there. And then our total invoice account, well, that depends on how much data you want to retain. It's not in the portal right now, but there's going to be a new setting now for how far back do you want to keep transactions in your portal. The default has always been just the 12 months, but maybe you've got receivables that are older than that, and you want your customers to be able to pay those and see those. So you might want to have more than 12 months, in which case your total invoice count for the whole system that you're synchronizing is going to be a little bit higher. But let's just say based on, you could just do a report and see how many you have, but really the easiest way to do it is say, well, how many invoices do you do a month, and then multiply that by the number of months that you want to retain data for. So if it's 18 months and you're doing 50, well, let's just use the example here. You issue 50 invoices per month and you want to retain 18 months of invoice history in your portal. Then you do the math and it's 900 invoices. Let's just use that number for the heck of it here. So let's try to get as close as I can to it. Let's just say 900. Okay, so let's go back up here. So how does that break out? Well, as you can see, the data cost, it's $9. It doesn't really, it adds a few dollars of cost here. But your main cost is obviously going to be in your users. All right. So yes, here's the give and the take on it. It is more complicated, but it's more flexible. So in the past, if you wanted to add customer users and you were, say, in this case, like I only want to have 150, but you were in a tier 100, so you could enable 100 customers in that particular plan. Well, if you wanted to do the 147, you had to go to 200. All right. So, and this becomes more of an issue the higher these numbers get. When you start to get into plans where you had 1,000 and you just have a few more customers you want to add, but you have to go to 1,500. So let's look at the math again on here. $154, and then to go to 1,500, you're going to go to 224. It's a significant amount that you're going to just waste because you're not using any of those. You're not going to be using those users for a long time. So this just makes it so that you are paying for really more exactly what you use. The downside to it is that it requires a sort of a subscription plan, a recurring thing that's dynamic. So the amount changes each month just based on what you use. Now, if you don't add customers all the time, if your customer level and your invoicing level is pretty static, well, then the amount's is gonna stay the same, unless our pricing changes. But absent that, you're going to be basically paying the same amount every month, plus or minus. You may have, let's say you lose a customer, you add a couple of customers, you're talking 15 cents on those. It's going to be pretty insignificant. It's not going to be a big deal. All right. So what else do I want to talk about here? That's about it, really, because I knew that when this was going to go into effect, that there was going to be some questions about, like, why do it this way? Like, it seems overly complicated. And again, I would just say that yes, it is, but we need to, because we need it to be flexible. There's just too many different kinds of companies and accounts and levels of volume and usage that you have to have this. It's the only way to make it fair, so that if I'm a really small operation, I only want to pay for what I'm going to use. And if I've got a lot of users, same thing. I don't want to overpay either. The difference between a 1,000 user account and 1,500 is it's a significant amount of money per month that I'm just going to waste. It doesn't make any sense. So that is how the new pricing works. And hey, if you have any questions about it at all, feel free to hit us up with a question. Even me personally, I'm happy to answer it. If you have a query about it, or you need clarification about the cost. But really the easiest way to know your costs, if you're just wondering, I don't know how much this is going to cost me, I don't get it. Just go on the screen, start from the top, put in how many users, how many staff users you want. Based on the total number of customers you have right now, you can kind of just guess how many of these you're going to want. Dial that in, and then these are fixed. It's just based on how many records are in your company file, except for the invoice part, because it depends on how many months of data you want. So you could just go into QuickBooks literally and query your invoice count for, say, the last year or the last 18 months or whatever the time frame you want, and then you'll come up with this number. You can just dial it in and you'll get your data costs. All right. And actually, you don't really have to worry about this too much if you're confused about the cost, because if you create a 30-day trial and then you go to the plan page, it will show you. What I would suggest is enable the accounts you want, or enable some accounts you want, or at least synchronize your data, and then it will already know your customer count and your invoice account. It'll have an estimate. So you can go into your plan page just to go look and see how much would it, based on how much I have right now, how much would it cost per month to run it. And you'll have a pretty good idea. The only thing you might not know is, because typically people who are testing don't enable that many customers, but you can very easily figure out your customer user cost by just multiplying it by 15 cents. And you got it. So that's it for now. That's my quick 10-minute or so explanation.